I'm going to call now to order the administrative citation hearing for the special magistrate for the city of Oviedo. And I believe everyone's been sworn in already, so we'll just go ahead and get started. The first case I have on the docket is Deborah N. Mager. Officer, you have an oath.
Morning.
Good morning.
My name's Officer Hart with the Oviedo Police Department.
Go ahead, officer.
I'm here for case 2014 CE 000182 against Ms. Deborah Mager. We're here because on February 1st at 9:03 p.m. I responded to the area of 958 Shed Street due to a loud and disturbing noise complaint that we had received from a resident on Rich Drive, which is directly behind 958 Shed Street. When I first got there, I stopped at the intersection of Pine Avenue and Shed Street, and I could hear loud music down at that intersection. I then drove all the way down to the end of Shed Street, which is about maybe a quarter mile or so, to a quarter mile, and could hear loud disturbing music from the backyard of 958 Shed Street. I've been out there many times before and issued verbal warnings for the same issue. The last time I'd been out there, at the end of December, I let the resident, Ms. Deborah, know that next time we came out, there'd be a citation issued because we've been out there so many times, and explained to her the process. And so that night I gave her, per my sergeant's orders, gave her the administrative citation for the loud disturbing noise.
Okay, and I do have a copy. I should ask, has the respondent received a copy of what I have?
Yeah, she received it when she got
I know
it.
she, right.
I do have a copy for her.
If you wouldn't mind, just, I want to put it into evidence and need to see if she has an objection. Can you look at that and let me know if you object to that being the city's Exhibit A? You have it. And okay, no objection? Okay. All right, anything else? I realize you object overall, but do you object to me looking at this piece of paper? Okay. All right, is there anything else?
That's all I have for right now.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Mager? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Maher, sorry.
Has been an ongoing problem since December 6th. I have a neighbor that resides behind me, and I have resided in front of her for approximately 8 years. The both of us have entertained during the course of the 8 years on the weekends, and there has never been an issue. When my husband was alive, we entertained almost every single weekend. We received no calls. All of a sudden in December, she started to call, and I have a timeline here so that way I could explain to you how it transpired.
Okay, can you show it to the officer?
Yes.
And you're going to leave this with me?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know that I had to, but I have no problem doing that.
I'm sure our clerk is going to love
I'm
filing
sorry.
that. Officer, do you have any objection to demonstrative evidence?
I want to just review it.
The timeline. The first call was on December 6th.
Can you try to stand just by the microphone and make sure that you're...
The first call was on December 6th. She called 911 at 7:43. When the officers arrived, they stated in their report that it was 10:04. I don't know police verbiage, so I'm unaware what that means. And here's the event reports for all the dates that are on my timeline, if I can give them to you.
Officer, these are copies of the event reports from the city. you have any objection?
The second call was on Friday, December 27th. She once again called 911 at 9:56. Upon arrival, the report reflects that nothing was heard. Her third call was on the same night. She called 911 at 10:04. The complainant was told officers were already at my home why she was calling, and that's also reflected in the additional report. Her fourth call was the same night, Friday, December 27th. She called 911 again at 10:13. I was advised I was good until 11 o'clock. The fifth call,
When
I
you
was
say that,
advised by an officer that I was good until 11 o'clock to play my radio.
okay, so in other words, the volume,
Was,
oops, I'm sorry, the
Yes.
volume,
I was good, and they advised me that she was drinking again. My neighbor has a drinking problem.
okay, let's stay on
The fifth
the
call
calls.
was the same night, Friday, December 27th. She called 911 again. The complainant was angry I could continue to play my music and yelled several expletives at me. She called 911 and said I threatened her, when in all honesty, what I had said to her is that the next time I hear her beating her husband's, can I say a bad word in the courtroom?
I don't think it's really relevant to whether or not you're playing loud music on this date. So I realize that you have a controversy with your neighbor that's causing you problems, and I'm interested in the phone calls to the police, but try not to get so much into just the disagreements.
Okay. Well, there really hasn't been any disagreements with this that pertains to what the police officers deem appropriate volume. And I've read the city ordinance. But on this date, on the 27th, Lieutenant Janeo came out, and he advised me that I was good to play my music until 11 o'clock. And this is from the lieutenant. At that point, I asked him, well, what do I do? Because my parents are supposed to be coming over for Super Bowl, and that's on a Tuesday. And until that point, I was under the impression that you could only play music until 11 on Fridays and Saturdays only. And he corrected me, and he said, no, ma'am, you can play your music until 11 o'clock Monday through Sunday, not just on Fridays and Saturdays. So he corrected me, and that's what he said. So that's how we got to where I stood corrected on. Up until that point, I believed that you could only play your music on the weekends, and he said, no, you could play it throughout the week until 11 o'clock. Do I give this to you, the first page?
You can put, he set up a, do you see how this works? See how he set up the, you
I hear it. I'm seeing it. I don't know.
don't think they'll stay? Nope.
I'm just going to let you know.
Okay.
So I was advised by the lieutenant that I was complying with the law, I was abiding by the law, and that I was okay. On December 31st at 4:26, I have no idea what this was for, and there are no notations in the police event to refer to. It's on a telephone, a non-emergency number. I don't believe that it was her that called, but there's a report saying that an officer was at my house at 4:26. On that same day, even though I was advised by Lieutenant, also this is very important, on the 27th, while speaking with Lieutenant Janeo, because I was having my family over, I asked, should I pull a permit or attempt to pull a permit because my family's coming over and I don't want any problems. And he said, there will be so many parties all over Oviedo that that's not necessary. And then, unfortunately, it happened. So on Tuesday, December 31st at 7:48, it says ONV. And I didn't know what ONV meant. So I had no idea what ONV meant, and it was explained to me as follows. It is when an officer takes it upon himself to drop by on his own accord. And that was Officer Hart. Officer Hart states in the report he was referring to numerous citizen complaints in a loud party. However, after requesting all event reports from all of the homes in my vicinity, there were absolutely no complaints made either by 911 or non-emergency at this time. My problematic neighbor had yet to call, so this seems very questionable to me. I also have the call log referring to the night that I received the citation and on New Year's Eve, and there are 9 addresses here that are around the vicinity of my home. There were no calls,
Can
no
you
calls.
try to make it so that the person can see?
This is my home. There were no calls from the neighbors on both sides of me. There were no calls from any of the neighbors behind me, and there were no calls made on either night from any of the neighbors that reside in front of me. The only call that I received that day was from the complainant who lives behind me. So there were no calls. So on his report where it says that he's responding to numerous citizen complaints, there are none. On,
927 Rich Drive.
she calls later on ahead of that. This is at 7:48 in the evening, and there were no hits.
Oh, yes, you gave me, yes.
On Tuesday, December 31st, at 9:35, there was her 6th call to 911. She lied and said she asked me to turn on the music. During this time, there was no music playing because no one could figure out how to hook up the karaoke machine. I have lived in front of her for 8 years, and we both have enjoyed our music without any problem. The report also states hold for Officer Hart.
The report states what, I'm sorry?
Hold for Officer Hart.
So how many, is there more on your timeline?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, go ahead.
Her 7th call was Tuesday, December 31st at 9:47. She called 911 again. She advised there was a lot of yelling, screaming, and loud music. However, upon arrival, Officer Hart advised he cannot hear any music or people from the front yard. I also spoke with the sergeant at this time, who stated, if we receive one more call after 11 tonight, unfortunately for you, I will have to issue you a citation. I told him that I have never received a call after 11 and that I would have my family stay inside, which I did, and we brought everybody inside that night. And there were no other incidents after that. The 8th call was Friday, January 10th at 6:22 p.m. She called 911. I was grilling dinner outside when I heard a knock at my door. I was in disbelief that she called again. Officer Dandler stated I was doing absolutely nothing wrong and that I should be able to enjoy my home and backyard. He stated she was drunk and he was going to put it in a way that she would understand she shouldn't play games with 911 and the Oviedo Police Department. And if she did, she would go to jail. He departed my residence and no other officers returned that night. She yelled many explicitives in my direction that night, but that was that. I continued grilling and then we ate dinner and there were no more further problems. And that was at 6:22. So because of this, my family and I stayed inside. We hadn't barbecued. We hadn't entered into the backyard for a period of 3 weeks. There is no calls because nobody went out back. So the 9th call was Saturday, February 1st at 9:03. She called 911. My family and I had not entered into our backyard for 3 solid weeks. The first time we went out into the backyard, I received a citation because Oviedo has enabled my neighbor to misuse 911 without any repercussions. I have been told by 5 officers that she is drunk, crazy, or an alcoholic. Officer Hart and Officer Bologna spoke with me for over 10 minutes. For the duration of our conversation, I was never asked to turn down the stereo that was supposed to be audible for 2 streets. No one had to speak loud to hear each other except for Officer Hart when he yelled at me. It wasn't until Officer Hart was leaving he stated, "You need to turn down the stereo before I leave." So for the duration of our conversation, he didn't ask me that. So I turned it down 1 decibel because it wasn't loud to begin with that night. There were 6 of us sitting around a bonfire making whistles for the kids next door, and I turned it down 1 decibel. I asked if that was okay, and unfortunately, simultaneously, Officer Hart said no, and Officer Bologna said that's fine. So at that point, because of my confusion, I asked them if they could please have a private conversation and advise me what they deem appropriate, because in front of me, they both couldn't agree. I had one officer saying it was fine. I had the other one saying no, it wasn't. I waited for about 15 minutes because I thought they were having their conversation at the side of my house, and they were gone. During that time, I asked Officer Hart if I could speak with the sergeant because I felt there was a misinterpretation, because the sergeant on New Year's had told me, if I receive one more call after 11 tonight, unfortunately for you, you'll receive a citation. I asked if I could speak to the sergeant and was told if he called him out there, I would go to jail. I said, indeed, I would like to speak with the sergeant, and Officer Hart reiterated I would go to jail if he called the sergeant out. Officer Hart further stated if he received another call, he would bypass the second ticket altogether and take me to jail. I asked if I could contest this citation. Officer Hart said, no, you're going to pay this ticket. Officer Bologna told me, take it to the magistrate to get it thrown out. Officer Hart also instructed me to keep my family inside for the Super Bowl, and I would like to know who protects me and my family from my neighbor.
Okay, that was complete. I appreciate everything you brought. Do you have anything else that you want to?
Yeah, the most important thing is that I've always listened, and I am going by the advice of all of the police officers, and this has just happened. Like I said, it started in December 6th. If the stereo was that audible, the first thing that I would have been asked to do is turn the stereo down. But we had a conversation in my backyard for over 10 minutes, and we all spoke in normal voices, and no one had to speak over each other. And if that is why I was receiving the citation, the first thing they should have asked, or Officer Hart should have asked me, would have been to turn down the stereo that was supposedly so audible. But it was almost like it was not even a thought until he was leaving, and then that's when he asked me that I have to turn on the stereo before he leaves. And then I have two officers contradicting each other, and everything I asked that night, the end result was I was going to go to jail. I spoke with the lieutenant regarding this, and to attempt to arrange a conversation with my neighbor and I, because for 7 years we have not had any problem, 7 or 8 years, and I feel that the citation was a misinterpretation of what the sergeant said pertaining to New Year's, not 4 weeks later. So he's saying the sergeant said if you receive one more call, you would get a citation. That is not what the sergeant said, and I feel it's just a simple case of misinterpretation. That pertained to New Year's, not 3 weeks later. So according to him, if there was ever one more call for the remaining of my years, I would get a ticket. If I'm abiding by the law and I'm operating within the confines of the law, I shouldn't have to pay because my neighbor is an alcoholic. Yes. When Officer Dandler came out, he advised me that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I've had numerous officers come out, and I'm going by what law officers are telling me. I'm a citizen. I try to study the noise complaint ordinance to educate myself, because education is knowledge. It's so outdated, and the verbiage in there refers to steam engines and words like that and a phonograph, and I wasn't sure if that was one of the things you wind up. Even that is iffy, but I'm not disturbing any of my neighbors, and I don't know what has transpired to irritate the lady behind me, but I'm paying for it, and my family is paying for it. And I shouldn't have to not have my parents over on a Sunday afternoon because they're going to get called.
Is it possible that the stereo at these different times when you're getting different assessments by the police officers, that it's set on a different level?
That's possible. That is possible. It never, to be honest, it would never be at the same kind of volume, I don't think. When you turn it on, you have my daughter, she would adjust it, I would adjust it. There are two other people there. So I can honestly say I wouldn't assume that it's always on the same volume. But it is not. There were times years ago when my husband was still alive, we used to blare the radio. We used to have parties, and the radio is on. We're just in the backyard, and we're just doing what we've been doing since I've resided in that home. And this has just taken place in December.
Okay. All right, anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Officer Hart, can I ask you a couple of questions, please, sir? The first call on December 6th, she said it says it was a 10-0. What does that mean?
A 10-0?
Yeah, does that?
10-04.
I'm sorry, 10-04.
It sounds like that would be one of the occasions we've gotten a complaint, and I've gone out there and I have not heard anything, or I have not heard any loud disturbing noise, so.
So sometimes you're getting complaints and you're going out and you're not even knocking
Right,
on the
either
door.
it wasn't loud or disturbing to begin with, or it's already been turned down, and if I don't hear it, I don't observe it.
You're not knocking
I
on
don't
her
make
door.
contact.
Right.
I only have gone up and made contact when I've determined that it's reasonably loud and disturbing.
Right.
And as far as the incident where she's talking about us not getting dispatched, we didn't receive any phone calls on that, but I happened to have been driving down Corbin Court, which is the street one north to Shed Street,
Right.
and I was flagged down by about 2 or 3 different families complaining about the music, not the one lady that calls in a lot.
Okay, so there are other complaints that you received other than
Yes, ma'am.
yours?
But that would also be why she's not finding dispatch records for different houses on Rich Drive or Shed Street or anything like that.
And it's your sworn testimony that when you pulled up behind the house, you could hear the music playing from your car? On
Well, the
Fourth
night
Street
that I issued the citation, Officer Bologna went and met with the complainant who's in the street directly behind. I went directly to Shed Street. We both responded.
Okay.
I could hear loud noise at the end of Shed and Pine. As I drove down, I could distinguish it better as music coming from that house.
How far was it when you started hearing the music? How far do you think you were?
The intersection of Shed and Pine is about maybe 1/8 of a mile to the east of their house. Their house is towards the very end of Shed Street.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You have a response?
Yes.
Okay, only as to what he just said.
Yes. If he's saying that on December 31st that people waved him down on Cochrane, how would he know that the music would be coming from my house if it was New Year's Eve? Because at that time, we weren't even playing the music. We weren't even playing the music.
I think his testimony was that he heard it and then followed it to its source. Okay. Anything else? What it looks like is many calls, sometimes they find that they are not warranted phone calls, and sometimes they find that they are. And I feel for you. A neighbor that it can be one of the worst things to have to live with, in my opinion, is a neighbor that's especially difficult, and that is especially difficult, I think. But I think the officers have shown that they use their best judgment in deciding whether or not to ask you to turn down the music. And although the lieutenant interpreted it, or your interpretation of what the lieutenant said is different from perhaps Officer Hart's, I didn't ask him about it. People can have different interpretations of what someone said, and that's actually now we're into like double hearsay. And I can consider it, the rules of evidence aren't as controlled here as they are in a court of law, but I think it's certainly possible that what you heard the lieutenant say can just be a different subjective interpretation of what Officer Hart heard, and he has the authority to make the determination when he hears it personally, if it's too loud. He has the authority to issue the citation. So I'm sorry for all of your problems, but I am going to find that the citation was issued properly, and I'm going to give you normally have 15 days from the day that the citation is issued to pay it. Do you need additional time to do that?
If I have Officer Belong telling me maybe to the magistrate to get it thrown out, then how am I getting this ticket? It's not justifiable. This
Okay.
is not
I've actually already ruled. My gesture to you was just if you had financial issues that might make it difficult to pay it within 15 days, then I was going to offer you some additional time. Do you need that, or would you like me to leave it the way that it's normally? Because the 15 days has certainly passed, but you had a right to a hearing. I'm finding that it was properly issued, and so I'm going to issue an order stating that, and I'm asking you if you need more than 15 days to make that payment.
Yeah.
How about 30 days? Would that be all right? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to find that the respondent was issued citation number PD 0009 on February 1st, 2014, and that the city has met its burden in establishing that the respondent did at that time violate Section 22-120 of the City of Oviedo's Code of Ordinances, and that the respondent shall have to the close of business on Monday, March 31st, to make payment of the fine levied via the citation to the City of Oviedo. And Ms. Maher will be sending you a written order, so that you'll have this in writing. Okay? Thank you for being here today. Thank you for all of your work. I appreciate it. Thank you, Officer. All right, we have Sean Moriarty. Are you Mr. O'Rourke?
Your Honor, with regards to citation number PD 0127 to Sean Moriarty as the administrative arm of the citation process, my office did not receive a request for hearing, nor had they received a payment for this ticket as of the date of this docket. So we would ask that you enter the appropriate order, and we will send it to collections.
Okay, and just to be clear, there's no respondent here.
Correct.
So I will enter that order. Thank you. Do we have anything else for the good of the cause? No? All right, then we'll stand adjourned.